Hello, good morning. It's Saturday, August 1st, and we'll be looking at the 18th chapter of Luke today. The first story we get is the story of the persistent widow and the unjust judge, where the lesson apparently of the story is that if this unjust judge would eventually give the widow justice, then won't your Father in heaven, who is just, much more give you justice or give you what you ask for on your persistence. So the persistent widow, that's a story that is very familiar, not extremely familiar, but it's a story that's in there, and it's a parable for the time. Then you have a Luke exclusive in here that is two men praying, the sinner and the Pharisee. And what you have is the Pharisee goes up and says out loud all the wonderful things he does, and thanks God that he is the way he is and not like that guy over there, that tax collector. And the tax collector simply says, "Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner." And then Jesus says, there's more reward or good things towards this man who is repentant, who needs God, who relies on God more when he prays the prayer, have mercy on me. So I have a story about that, because I think what it means, what it's telling us is that people were very maybe oppressed by the idea that there were these guys walking around and they were so much holier than everyone else. And it's so funny that Jesus tries to tell us this in the Gospels thousands of years ago, and we still, in the church, people that claim Jesus act like the Pharisee in this parable, based on their religious life and how holy they think they are. And we still have this separation between this is the sinner and this is the saint. So it's all about perceptions about the way we judge others before we look at our own self. So, I don't know, we live in this area where there's a lot of affluence and wealth around us, and maybe it's not always in our neighborhoods where we live, but anywhere we go. So on Thursday of this week, I went to the hospice at the Pavilion, and I was leaving, and I was going to, pull out of the parking space, and I had to wait on this Bentley. Right? And so no judgment. I mean, if you drive a Bentley, good for you. That's wonderful. It's a lot of money for a car. And it was the color of the Bentley that stuck out to me. It was the color of my finger. It was a weird color. So as I'm like, okay, well, I have to wait to back out. I want to give them some space, be friendly, be kind. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, gosh, these people waste all this money on cars. But I didn't think about them being at the hospice. And I followed them down Military Trail because they just happened to be going the same direction I was going back to my house in Abacoa, and they turned into the Aycock Funeral Home. And at that point, the judgy 45-year-old Gen X suburban mom woman died away to the pastor. There was such an inclination to turn my car into the funeral home and go with them and hold their hand, because I knew I had followed them from hospice to the funeral home. I knew the path that they were walking down. And all of a sudden, they became less of a ridiculous person that wastes money on a car and somebody that's actually going through something that could need a tender touch, a loving hand. And it happens in the blink of an eye. And it overwhelmed me that I could be that quick to judge, and then at the same time that quick to go, this is what's happening in their life right now. Followed them from hospice to the funeral home. This is that day for them. And no matter what kind of car they drive or what they look like, there are people in need of love and need of support. And I can I can be patient as they pull out of the parking space and not judge. So that was my lesson from that I thought related to this judgment about these two people, the tax collector, the Pharisee. Because, I'm in the car. I'm in the Subaru. I'm a good person. I don't misuse funds by spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on cars and frivolous things like that. I'm sitting in judgment. I'm sitting in judgment until I understand that the people in that car have a desperate need, and they're having one of those just desperate days. As a pastor, you have this inclination to help, to aid, especially in times of grief and loss. Then that's not the end of the chapter 18 in Luke, though. So there's more. People bring children to Jesus. That's synoptic. That's in all three. There's this parable of the rich young man who says, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says this, this, and this. He says, I do all that. And he says, give up everything. He says, ooh, I can't. So that's synoptic too. Then he predicts his passion for the third time. Synoptic for all three Gospels. They all have this prediction of passion. Not identical, but they're very, very similar, as they have united source material. And then you have the healing of the blind man. Very synoptic, very similar, but only Mark's gospel identifies the man as Bartimaeus. He gives him a name. It's all set in Jericho. All three gospels agree that it's Jericho, that it's a blind man, that the whole miracle is pretty similar, except for Mark identifies him as Bartimaeus, but the others decide just to leave his name out. I don't know why, but that's just how it goes. And they had the information because Mark was the first gospel. So that's always kind of weird and unusual. But that is Luke 18 for this Saturday. And Lord willing, we will be experiencing the calm before the storm, or maybe it's going to pass over us altogether. Fingers crossed, and prayers. God bless.